There's one of my wonderful selfies. That's not cropped or anything. That's just one of my selfies in Winnipeg. If you ever get to go to Winnipeg, awesome. It's really, really friendly. It's miles away. It's absolutely miles away. And it's very isolated, but it's lovely. Very friendly. But they've got the Museum of Human Rights, and it's a fascinating museum. It's also incredibly depressing. And like the Czech Republic, they drink a lot too. But it's a really good place to go. So if you ever get a chance, go. So my name is Stef Cormack. I'll quickly, if I can make the slides work, I'll tell you who I am. There we go. So I by background, I'm a paramedic. I started in the last millennium as a paramedic. I did helicopter emergency medicine for about 10 years, was a critical care paramedic, and that's really, really got me interested in human factors. And I can rarely find sensible pictures of me. So you get pictures like this taken by someone else. It's really cool looking. And I was thinner and younger. But since leaving the ambulance service, since leaving HEMS because my knees hated it, I wanted to do a PhD and I did one. It's great. I thoroughly recommend doing one so you can share the pain. It is totally worth it. It takes a long time, it's a lot of work, but it's really, really niche. So my niche area was in non-technical skills in a paramedic managed out of hospital cardiac arrest. It's a right mouthful. And I developed what's the posh term is a behavioural marker system, which is basically an observational assessment tool. So that's one small bit, but since then that's allowed me to go on to work towards my chartered status as a chartered human factors specialist. And I will be leaving the beautiful University of Wolverhampton in about 6 weeks as I move into patient safety and making more use of my human factors background and knowledge. So it's quite, yeah, I'm sorry, Stu. I had told you all. I did email you all. Sorry, Steph. I'll still be around, don't worry. I'll be there. I'll be doing stuff. It's very emotional. The student's not happy, I'm sorry. So there'll still be cat pictures, don't worry. So basically, that's me in a nutshell. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of a rapid run through because for those who've seen me, I can talk all day on this. I really can talk for hours on this, and I did it today at Warwick for the poor critical care paramedics there in a very hot room, and we had to go outside. So I will take you rapidly through what is human factors and ergonomics. We'll have a little look at crew or crew resource management, crisis resource management, team resource management, threat and error management. And I'll start broad and I'll bring you all the way down to non-technical skills and how that can apply to that kind of out of hospital area of practice. So it is very much a big, big thing. Oh, so human factors or ergonomics. It's not just crew resource management, not non-technical skill. Those are very small parts of it. It's vast. It is a big, big thing. And it's not just for humans. I hate to tell you. It's very much about system design. It's an engineering thing. So my PhD, I think officially sits in, aviation, aerospace and electrical engineering. And it sounds dead posh and fancy. People go, "Ooh, you're an engineer." And I go, "No, I'm a paramedic." I designed a tool that sits in it though. So it comes up from in aviation and just sounds very fancy. But I think this slide, the blue bit on the slide, it kind of sums it up as best as I can. So it's lots and lots of factors. And it's all about how it integrates together. It's about the places you work, the organizational culture in which you work in, equipment, so equipment design, usability, we call it human factors in the UK. Americans kind of call it ergonomics. But you say ergonomics to us, and we think it's about sitting at a desk and someone coming around and measuring you and seeing if you're looking at your screen properly. So it kind of gets shortened to HF or HFE. It's about your brain working. It's about IT, as much as I hate IT. So it's a lot about the entire system. And it's really about sort of how we work together in that as a human and as people. And you think that sounds dead simple. So I'll try and myth bust a little bit. And you might be thinking, yeah, I know that. Of course, that's common sense. But it's not just about people. It's not just about human error. Oh, the classic saying, human error. Oh, it's all human error. You'll see frequently on the news things like it was human error. No, I made a mistake. I am human. I just made a bit of a cock up. But it's not just about that. It's not just about team training. It's not just about non-technical skills. It's not just about crew resource management. Those are the big things that hit the news because they're developed from aviation, which is where human factors comes from. And that's all everybody seems to think. And if you've ever, watched the film Sully or Flight's great, then actually there's certain elements of it there, but it's so much more. HFE sorts it out by modifying people's behaviour. No, it doesn't. We don't want to modify you. We just want to make the system a little bit easier to work in. It's all clinical skills and simulation. Can be, we can do that. It can be useful. It can be useful to run some simulation to find out what's going on or address things. And it's not just common sense. People go, well, if it's it's common sense, then we'd all be doing it. So really, what is HFE? Well, actually, it's about sort of a design. So if we think about a system with a human in it, it's about designing that system to make things easier for the person working in it. And it's trying to build in systems to cope with unanticipated events, which is hard. It tries to modify the system, so improve the system, make it, if someone's cutting corners, find out why they're cutting the corners and see why that's happening and understand it. And then what do we have to do to improve that system? It goes for individuals. Yes, it goes from non-technical skills and teams and stuff like that, but it's a big organizational thing. And in the NHS in the UK, and probably in elsewhere in the rest of the world, there's a big blame culture. People are scared to put their hands up and say, I made a mistake, because it kind of results in disciplinary action and you only hear the bad stories. So actually you have to look at the organization as a whole, and actually it's about improving design for human use. And the way it does that, it uses lots of speciality areas. So if you're working in nuclear, you'd have a HFE specialist who does nuclear work. Same with railways, maritime, aviation. And then we come to healthcare. So healthcare is very complex. It's very layered. It's not linear. I really hate to tell you, but it's not Swiss cheese. But it's about using, and this is why I love HFE, because as a researcher, I get to use both quantitative and qualitative methods, because it's about understanding what's happened, but mostly about why. So there's methodological skill sets and the way you view things. So if you want to go and touch a bit of philosophy, it's about how you interpret that world. So I'm a pragmatist. I use pragmatism because I'm a mixed methods lunatic. And it's about how it all works in the real world and how does it apply. So in the words of Stephen Shorrock, who's amazing, please, honestly, if you ever get to read stuff by him or meet him, humanistic systems is fantastic. And I've got a slide in that all about work as done versus work as imagined, and then many more. So actually, human factors and ergonomics is vast. And this is a great slide, because actually it's about putting the person in the middle and looking at everything that's going around. And if you're working in the NHS at the moment, you might have heard of the new Patient Safety Reporting Incident Framework coming into it, PSIRF, which is using SEEPS, which is a human factors engineering model. And it considers lots of things. So it considers the person, the tasks, the environment, the things they've got to use, the equipment, the place where they work, the organizational culture of where they work. And it's about thinking, how do they affect each other? So it's very, very interlinked. And it's about actually designing systems and equipment and things to make it better. And there's a lovely slide. I saw one the other day. I can't remember who it was by. It wasn't Sue Hignett. If you fancy human factors, have a look up at Loughborough University or Aberdeen. Very, very good. But it was about saying, well, what do I need to make it easier for this task to be done? How do I think about the place where it's being done, the environment, the time, the people around them? And this is what is so specific to out of hospital practice, is that environment is constantly changing. It's very unpredictable. It's very, very unscheduled, and it's got lots of variables. So trying to optimize a system in there is hard work, which is why I'm going to work in a hospital trust. Not easy. But you can do certain things to actually make it a little bit easier. And if you've looked at the Class Publishing Human Factors book by Gary Rutherford, in there is the onion model, and it's fascinating. The onion model is in everything. It's in research, it's in human factors, and lots of things. But it's thinking about that whole system. So human factors and ergonomics is very much thinking about, okay, we have a people element to it, but that's not just the clinician. It's all the different types of clinicians. It's might be police, fire, recovery, it's the patient, it's family, it's bystanders, it's everybody. And then you've got to think about actually, well, how competent are these people? What is their training? What is their education? What's the task at hand that needs to be done? Is it a clinical task? Is it a non-clinical task? What equipment have you got? Is it well designed? Does it work? Is it intuitive? Is it easy? Technology. We love technology. It frequently fails. We have system designs. It's very, very fallible. And then you throw humans interacting with that technology, and I can guarantee I can break it. When I used to work on Midlands Air Ambulance, I used to get asked to test equipment, because if I couldn't break it, then it was probably okay. And I could break a lot of things. I could just touch stuff and it breaks. And then you'll have standards. So your policies, your procedures, your operating procedures, and that kind of thing. Who wrote them? Are they for you? Or is it just for a book? Is it to tick an exercise? Is it for sort of, set standards and things? Or is it designed to be used? And for me, I think it's that person-centered usability that is incredibly important, because our environment is very different. And that can change from case to case, from day to day, from country to country. So it's very much about actually understanding the work being done by the people who are doing it. And at times, organizations don't quite grasp that. And this is why you'll find human factors specialists embedded in quite a few hospitals and healthcare across America. But not so much here. We're behind the curve, and it's slow. It is slowly trickling in. As Lisa says, make it easy and get it right. Make it hard to get wrong. But we are human. We will find a way to get it wrong. But that's part of the whole learning culture of actually saying, I got it wrong, so let's have a chat about it and let's share it. And that links the whole, if you've heard of it, safety 1 and safety 2 thinking, and safety 3 is coming. It's always a sequel. So safety 1 is very much that retrospective. That's James Reason's Swiss cheese model of, okay, so we'll look back now with beautiful hindsight in a very controlled environment, and we'll see what went wrong and we'll try and fix it. And that's great. But that's in a nice controlled environment looking back with plenty more information. Safety 2 is looking at what's going well and actually saying, okay, why is that going well? Could that go well elsewhere? Could that translate? So safety 3 is trying to merge those two together and recognize that things will go wrong, but some things are going very well. And it's understanding why they go wrong, why they go well, and how those can interlink and actually make it easy and safer for everybody to work with. And this is what I was telling you about, Stephen Shorrock from Humanistic Systems. It's fantastic. He's an amazing writer, he's a great guy. And there's lots of different ways of thinking about how things work. We all have this work as prescribed. So your organizations say, well, it should be done like this because that's how it is, isn't it? And you're like, no, it's not. Why did you cut that corner? Why did you do that? You know, why did you keep the monitor on the stretcher? Well, if I put it on its little holdy thing, I can't see it. That's no good for me. Why didn't you have your seatbelt on in the back of the truck? Because I was trying to do CPR. I had to do something for the patient. And interestingly, there was a news article the other day on a non-emergency ambulance driver who'd had a crash and the patient had died. So the seat restraints in the UK are legs, laps, and shoulders. And this was a little old lady. And the people said, yeah, but the shoulder straps really cut in. And actually, they're really uncomfortable. I mean, wouldn't it be lovely to have some of those little soft, and get them in cars? There's little soft things that you can put on so you're not constantly kind of pulling away. So you can have that work as prescribed and work as imagined. But actually, you've got to go and observe it, because what we're aiming for is work as done. Work as simulated. We've all been there with the rubber mannequins and the terrible fitting airways and things that come off in your hand, like arms and legs, monitors that don't quite work, and it's a different thing to the real life, so it's not quite the same. And then you always get the classic phrase of, I wouldn't do it like that if it was real, honestly. So actually, that work is simulated from a human factors point of view. If you can make it as realistic as possible, and it is that kind of train hard, play hard. If you go to Czech Republic, it's drink hard as well. If you can make the sim as realistic as possible, then it prepares you better. And it kind of translates more to that work as done. We know it's not work as done, but actually it's the best you can probably get from an out of hospital point of view. You've got so many different views of it. Work as observed is really useful. Part of human factors specialist roles are to observe, try and interpret and understand, so we can address issues as work is done rather than as imagined or prescribed or as judged. So this is a really, really important step to human factors. And if you're working in an organization and you're finding a pattern of events, maybe you've done some qualitative analysis, and the words of Bourne and Clark, things do not emerge. I think they will come and find you and kill you if you say that. It's that actually it's identifying things, it's identifying patterns, but recognizing your own position in that and your own biases. So actually that we will it down to that work as done to understand and then change the design of something, change the system, change a policy to really make it easier for the person doing that task at that time, in that place, in that environment. Because that's really what human factors, particularly in healthcare, is all about. So, root cause analysis, risk assessments. So root cause analysis was really pushed hard by the NHS about probably a decade ago. Likelihood of something happening versus the consequences of it. And we used to do filming on the helicopter for Discovery Channel, stuff like that. And this poor camera, stroke director, stroke producer, stroke sound person, Georgina, used to say, what's the worst that could happen? And I go, well, a meteor could come down from the sky and it could, flaming. And she'd just look from behind the camera and just be like, don't do this. So root cause analysis there is no one single root cause. There's you can't trace it back and just kind of go, that was it, that was the fault, it was the meteor. There's actually a lot of variables that happen, and so actually you can kind of assess stuff and say, is this likely to happen realistically? What's the risk of it happening? Will I die? And as a consequentialist, yeah, we all die at some point. Prior to that, you'll probably lose your job and get homeless and hooked on fentanyl and die after having a student crew come out to you. But we came up with James Reason's Swiss cheese, and it's lovely. It's lovely and linear, which the healthcare is not. Healthcare is very complex, but it's quite a nice way of trying to understand the cause and effect of things. For me, it links more to threat and error management. So it very much is about, if you can use this prospectively and review things and observe things and find out where those holes are and stop them, that's great. That's threat and error management. That's about identifying threats, dealing with them and trying to stop them. If you can't stop them, how can you manage them from getting worse? But a lot of this is always kind of retrospective hindsight. So this slide's a really good one there, because on there, the staff shortages and inexperienced team members. And at the moment, that seems to be a hot topic, especially in ambulance trusts, of actually there's quite a high turnover of staff, as staff kind of being burnt out, especially post-COVID. Mentoring's hard work. New opportunities are arising. Not all paramedics wear green in the UK, and there's lots more opportunities. So suddenly you have staff shortages, and that gets replaced with very inexperienced people, because it takes time to build exposure. And it's not about the amount of time that you've been a paramedic or been in a job. It's actually, what's your exposure like? And actually some of that relates to that workers observed, or actually understanding why stuff happened, and then chatting about that and understanding people's perceptions and viewpoints. Because I'm getting on a bit now. I've got quite a lot of clinical experience and non-clinical experience. So the way I view a patient would be very, very different to the way a newly qualified paramedic or paramedic with 5 years land experience would view it to a HEMS paramedic and stuff. So actually, if you try and understand it, that comes into that kind of threat and error management of there are certain risks are there. There are new ways. I mean, the Swiss cheese is built on the sort of 1930s domino effect of give it a push and it will go. But when you look at things like human error, as people like to call it, then it's more of a mistake, and it's understanding why that mistake happens, and not being punitive about it. And the SEEPS model, so Pascal Carrion, who I got to listen to at an online training session about a month ago. Oh, she's amazing. And she sort of led and worked on these SEEPS tools, so the systems engineering, patient safety tools, of which there are several. They build on each other as they learn more. So they didn't just make a tool and then said, there you go, enjoy it. They fed back. This is the thing. It is about communication. It's about feeding forward, feeding back, listening, redesigning, updating, asking people how are you using this? How well is it working? Is it working? So SEEPS model now is on 3. There's SEEPS 1, 2, 3, 101, running out of numbers. But they very much build on that onion model, and the sort of circular thing that puts the person in the center and then radiates out to consider all the other things that are going on, the environment where you're working, as well as the external influences. So the back of all those registered paramedics, it's in the UK, it's some European countries, Australia, I know Canada looking at it. And I know the US again is vast, and it's almost like, 50 odd small countries in one large country. It's quite fascinating. It changes again and again and again. So actually it's about having that kind of legislation and that that registered kind of little voice in the back of your head that's always there, as well as that external influence. And hopefully any of my students and graduates, there's the voice of, what would Steph say? Don't do it. Stu, put your trousers back on. So the SEEPS model forms part of the UK's PSERS, and which is why health, human factors at the moment in the UK health code, oh my good grief from me, 20,000 fully independent EMS services. It's insane. We have the NHS, then we have some private services. 20,000, that is crazy. I think I'll stick to the UK. So HFE, it's hot. It's really hot right now in healthcare. Some of the other tools that are available include scary looking things, which I'll show you, like as FRAM. So functional resource management. You'll love it. You really will. Hierarchical task analysis, or NASA task load. That's a nice one. That's quite easy to do, actually. But it really is about thinking about the process, not just the task and the person. It's the whole process, and it's not always linear. Lots of things are going on at once, and they all link into it. And you only have to think about your own practice area, which there's lots and lots of people put in the chat, lots of different areas. It's fantastic to see. And Lisa says it's important that we nurture an open, honest reporting culture where you feel psychologically safe. It is so important, so hard to do. And that is moving from that blame to that. I don't know why it's called just culture. It doesn't really work. I think trust culture would be better, or open culture, where actually you can really sort of put your head above the parapet and have a chat and say, this went wrong. I did this because this didn't work. I put this here because of that. I couldn't see it. I needed it there. Going back to ambulance design, I've done some ride-alongs in Winnipeg. The roads are awful. They're way worse here. But I love the back of their ambulances. Oh, I love their ambulance design. It's designed for the clinician and the patient. It's not designed as a van to transport people, or a van that's been adapted and bodged together. It's designed as a mobile clinical unit, and I really like them. And there's really nice ones out there, rather than just modifying a van. But that's just me. So the tasks that happen, you think about your own work area and that your work is done. You're not doing something sequentially. You're doing multiple things at once, which means you got your brain to work as well, and other brains to work. So that's real work. So it's about your area of practice, which, just looking at the chats, there are a lot of different practice areas, from fire to rescue to water rescue to mountain rescue to a lot of independent ambulance services. That scares me. And this is SEEPS. This is an example of SEEPS. Very text heavy, I know. It doesn't always look like this. This is a working example, but you can see how layered it is, and you can see how actually, when you start looking from a true work system, actually there's people factors, and that's where those non-technical skills sit. Those little bits of non-technical skills sit in there. Things like and non-technical skills are those cognitive and social behaviors. Things like your classic leadership, teamwork, communication, situational awareness. The really misunderstood thing. And actually it's about everything else. So we've got people, we've got clinicians, we've got patients, we've got bystanders, we've got other clinicians, we've got other emergency service workers. The tools and technology. My dad was taken to hospital. I was there all day, and I was having a great time because I was watching and listening. And I think there were 6 different IT systems that didn't link and didn't talk to each other. So staff were having to use each different system, medication, for patient notes, for passing on, for referring. And I sat and I thought, why? Why would you do this to them? So tools and technology is massively important. I'm sure you can shout about some of the issues you've got with equipment and technology, because we're not, as paramedics and pre-hospital practitioners, we don't often get consulted on equipment design and how stuff should work, or how we want it to work. So you can see from this, it's vast. Yeah, in Canada, our ambulance is a unique vehicle on the road. You're so lucky. We did have some unique ones here, but they're too big for UK roads, which are small. So we have terrible, terrible, top-heavy, horrible vans. I told you I'd scare you with FRAM. So functional resource analysis methods. And I was trying to find one, particularly on out of hospital, and I couldn't find one. There's blood sampling as well, stuff in hospital, but this is just intra-hospital. So this going from one department in one hospital, or a hospital to a hospital. But this is where rubber meets the road. This is about FRAM analysis. And there's a terrific guy, Mark Sujan, I used to work with Warwick. He's a human factors specialist. He's done so much work on FRAM. He's amazing. If you get a chance to meet and chat to me, he's lovely. Google him. Google Mark Sujan, Sujan. There's a lot of work on FRAM and human factors, and a lot of in hospital and some pre-hospital work. But this is just this is an example, and this is that thing when I was talking about Swiss cheese. It's linear, and healthcare is not linear. It's complex. So what FRAM does is, it sounds like I'm talking about a person. It looks at each little bit. So it's looking at each one of those little boxes had another box on it. So it's looking at things like time and what tasks are being inputted, what resources are needed, what is coming out. And what it does is it links it together. And so actually the best way to do it is, if you go on to the, I think it's the Chartered Institute for Human Factors and Ergonomics, or the Clinical Human Factors group from Martin Bromley. There's they do FRAM with making a cup of tea. So if you're not English, or you're not from the UK, if you can find making a cup of tea FRAM analysis for tea making, you'll see how complex making a cup of tea is. It would terrify the Spanish, to be honest. But it's connecting those everyday variables, and it's very much a systems analysis. It's not really looking about how something might fail, but actually it's how about this system is working, identifying those weaker areas where failure could. Yeah, microwaving tea, you can get out now. So it's about experiences and everything else, and this is a very quantitative method, but it also links into qualitative, so that textual analysis of words and experiences and opinions. But it has to have a very clear aim, so it needs a start and an end point. Hierarchical task analysis, or HTA, is good. It's a similar thing. It doesn't have account of all those variables, and as it sounds, it's got a hierarchy to it, so it's more linear. It's probably easier to understand, but it doesn't even, sometimes for me, it doesn't really take out all those variables. And I think that's that pre-hospital, out of hospital background that I've got, is actually, it's so different, it's so varied, that this looks horrific, and you use software to do FRAM analysis, that actually this takes into account all those little variables, all those little different things that we know about in out of hospital care. This is actually from my PhD, so this is a very, very simple input process output modeling. But this is just looking at non-technical skills in a paramedic managed out of hospital cardiac arrest. And this was probably about, I know, I did 6 years part-time. This is 3 years in, maybe. This is from lit reviews, from questionnaires, from quantitative analysis, from focus groups and semi-structured interviews and stuff, where I was trying to really hone down what were those specific non-technical skills that paramedics really valued and found important and would actually work in and out of hospital cardiac arrest. And this is just, this is small. I mean, you look back and stuff, and I don't know why I did that, or I should have done this, and it's great. But yeah, it is what it is. It's a simplified way because that's how the brain works. But it was looking at those individual factors, though the things that my focus group said were the experience, the exposure, confidence. And the problem that I found with out of hospital cardiac arrest is that they are not that common. And so confidence was a real thing. The team factors, the way that in the UK our out of hospital teams are kind of constructed, different to in hospital, different to the USA, different to Europe. The size varies, they're unfamiliar, they're ad hoc, and that really results in difficulties. So that really kind of came out in the way that leadership as a word was hated. People associate that with very autocratic leaders and rank and pips. So actually what they preferred was team coordinator. And that was to really reflect the adapting roles that you particularly get in and out of hospital cardiac arrest or trauma care. So your major trauma, your polytraumas, your working jobs, self-efficacy as just a general question. In fact, it's not on there. That sounds something really posh. I wouldn't have written that. Tim, can you explain while I waffle on a bit more? But it's about that kind of fluidity. Roles will change. If you're the only clinician on scene with a clinical skill set, then you're going to have to be heads in clinical. But if you're not, what really works well is being hands off. If you can step back, be hands off, and coordinate, that works really, really well. And communication, two-way, improves, and the scene assessment improves as well. And then you throw in the environment as well. From that, we're talking people, the weather, the unusually hot weather we've got. We think it's hot. Canadians are going, get out. The noise, the unique thing that at some point we may have to move our patients. So this was just trying to map it because we're human. We're human. And that means we will do something wrong at some point. And we think we're fantastic and we think we can do two things at once, and we can't. We really, really can't. A rich cup of tea in a fancy cup. So yeah, I can't read and talk. And actually, Jonathan's got it there. You don't have to be a senior clinician. In fact, the less senior, the better. Because actually, it's about coordinating. You have to understand the roles and what the aim is. But actually, it's this processing system. So you've got certain elements of situational awareness. The problem I found in all my studies, and to this very day, I did it today at Warwick Med School, is it's a misunderstanding of situational awareness. It's kind of had that healthcare thing done to it where people go, it's just knowing what's going on. Oh, it's being spatially aware. It's knowing what's going on around you. And it is, but it's in Ensley's true form, it's very much about gathering information, making sense of it with what you know from your theoretical, so your tacit and illicit knowledge, and what you know, what you've read, combine that with your experiences and exposures, making sense, understanding it, spitting it back out, and then that third stage is anticipation. And it's that kind of, it's not just planning, and it's not just kind of thinking in your head, it's actually trying to anticipate. As Matt says, cognitive overload is huge in this. And at the moment in the West Mids area, cognitive overload is really, really, and task focus is a real issue, it seems. And that probably does link to the lack of exposure and kind of the high turnover of workforce. It's very easy to get distracted. It's very easy to get overloaded. And then you look at different types of attention from selective and focus and all that. So actually, it's quite difficult to even gather information. So my tool looked at situation assessment, just the first two stages of gathering information, making sense of it. Because what I found was clinicians would only link to an algorithm. They were not anticipating that that's the next level up. That's as you get more exposure, experience, and move into a different kind of clinical grade. But for your kind of average land paramedic, it was actually linking that bit of information as it keeps coming in, making sense of it, linking it all together in your head, and then linking it to a clinical algorithm to help you make decisions, because you can't have decision making without situation assessment or awareness. Yeah, tacit is important. Gosh, there's a lot to be said for books and experience. So cognitive load, what things affect you? So interpretation of the task. How, have you done it before? Have you seen it being done? See one, do one under supervision, do one yourself. Words of medical doctors. So it's about that perception of how difficult is this task? How much concentration, how much effort do I need to put into it? Does it mean that actually I'm going to be so focused, so eyes in, that I'm not going to listen? And so my favorite quotes from my research was, it's like I can't turn my ears on. And the participant was talking about, they were concentrating on an airway and something was going on and people were talking to them. They had no idea. They were just like, I can't turn my ears on. It just summed up beautifully about that operator effort. And it actually, sometimes the task performance will fail because it's about, you've exceeded your ability to meet the demands. It's too much. Because you are digging into your working memory and you might have to stop and sort of think, hang on, I'm going to have to look at my longer term memory here. I've got to actually dig into that memory. And it depends what you're doing. So as you do get experienced, and you get greater exposure to cases, whether it's trauma. Trauma is the same as cardiac arrest. It's actually underexposed in the UK. And when we do get it, we send every resource in the world to it. So it gets very diluted and it gets overwhelming, and there's too many people and there's too many cooks and it becomes a cluster. You know what I'm saying? So actually, role allocation and giving people individual tasks is really important. And where you try and multitask, it's difficult. You can do two things at once, as long as you're not using the same information processing pathway. You probably know what you can do two things at once at. I probably can't say it on this because it will go on YouTube, but that comes down to experience and exposure. And then you've got your own biases as well. So there's a lot of other variables when this is just focusing on getting information in and out of your head. So this is where threat and error management really comes in. And it's about it is a concept. It is a kind of thing about actually looking at those interrelationships between everything and then throwing it into an unscheduled, unpredictable environment that is challenging with people you don't normally work with, people you may not know. Years of practice of rubbing your tummy and patting your head. And patting as well. So we try and avoid error. That's where system design comes into it. That's where the system really needs to understand work is done rather than imagined or prescribed. And actually, that's where simulation is quite good for really doing those weird and wonderful cases. And then you go to a real case and it's nothing like you could ever have thought of. Can you track them? Can we avoid them? If we can't, can we recognize they're coming? And that's that anticipatory phase of situation awareness. Can you trap them and stop them? That, putting a lump of cheddar into the Swiss cheese. Or if it happens, what can we do to try and reduce the outcome of it? The multitude of roles and ranks, the students, ECPs, IIPs, it's all right, Craig. Different terminology, the language, medical language, lay people language, paramedic language, HEMS language, human factors language. The language doesn't help because it doesn't cross over. I'm just looking at ECP IAP. I'm thinking International House Pancakes now. It's understanding roles. And actually, if we don't know what someone's role or ability is, clinical competence is, then that actually that's a risk. You might ask somebody to do something which is outside the scope of practice. They might say no, get out of town. They might think, oh, I'll go for it. They're supervising me. Or they might just give it a go and be really bad at it because they've done it before. So actually, the team, the way we don't get time to brief out of hospital, very rarely. So actually, having someone to coordinate and identify who's who can do what. You'll have your brief in your ambulance maybe on the way there. Someone else is doing the same in another truck on the way there. And then you get together and it's completely different again because we rely on the general public to tell us stuff. And we all know that they lie. Or they just don't have that same perception or learning or experience or knowledge. So public perception is different to our perception, which is different to HEM's perception, which is different to every other people's perceptions. So when you look at the multitude of competencies, which is more important than roles and ranks, it's about, again, identifying the best person to do the task, the best person to do the best job. To do that, you've got to talk to each other. You are going to have to just chat. There's loads of different threats. We know this. Proficiencies, competencies. It's not actually good leader. It's not about leading. It's coordinate, it's working together, teamwork, it's leading and following, recognizing your own abilities. So recognizing when you are, knee deep and drowning, and that you just say, I really want someone to take over, but also voicing that. And that is another threat, that kind of actual threat that is not always identifiable because a lot of this is cognitive. So that's where communication is so important. I'm not happy with that. You don't have to sort of what the cuss. I'm uncomfortable. I've been uncomfortable all day. It's been really hot and sticky. I'm uncomfortable. I'm concerned. I'm uncomfortable. No. If you've ever worked with me, then I don't get the concern, uncomfortable, and safety concern. I just would say, what are you doing? I'm very blunt in my communication, but direct is a better word. So actually, just if you can, duck. We're not allowed to say duck. It is leadership is taught very much, but it is about fellowship. And that's a massive threat, which I must move on because Emma's giving a mental at time. And then we've got cognitive load, we've got cognitive freeze, and the Yerkes-Dodson, law, and it's stolen by Stephen Hearns. Brilliant book, really good performance under pressure. But it's that optimal pressure, the underload. I've sat on my bum all day and I'm really tired and all I can think is I want to go home. Don't give me a job. Oh, and then you've got that kind of, oh, it's all going okay. Oh my God, it's not going okay. And converts into that huge adrenaline dump, which gives you the bad stress. And then you're just like a squirrel trying to cross the road. You can't do anything. So too much stress will give you cognitive freeze and will just make it very difficult to process the simplest of things, like maths. I've tried to do drug calculations once, got a form, got a chart, got a memory aid. Couldn't make head and the tail of it. Very complicated scene. Working with a doctor. She said, it's all right, I'll work it out. I'm a doctor. I was like, go on then. Do you want my phone? Do you want the calculator? Still, between us, couldn't do it. And it is that kind of thing. Actually, sometimes you need to stop. So actually that tunnel vision, stopping and actually recognizing your own tiredness and stress. And that's not even getting into fatigue. Fatigue's a whole other thing. But that optimal stress, that's a good thing. And I wanted to put this slide in because it's quite pertinent. Because we've all been there, we've all done it. We all come out going, I know nothing. And I've watched for the last 3 years students go through this beautiful curve and they're about to start it all again, I hate to say. And it is that kind of, I'm all right, actually. I'm okay. I'm quite confident. I'm to the point of overconfidence in your own abilities, in yourself, I've been there, I've done that. Some students go, I've been on the road for years. You go, how long? 2. And then it dips, something will happen and it will just go. So again, it comes back to that understanding your team, understanding not necessarily how long you've worked somewhere or done something, but understanding your competencies and exposures. Well, how often have you used the 3-way tap? Because I've used them a lot, and I still have to really concentrate on using 3-way taps to the point I look like a lunatic. So I'm just concentrating on talking to myself. If I don't, I will cock it up. So right, I'm going to motor through the beautiful Professor Ken Catchpole. One day, my goal will meet him. So when we focus down on non-technical skills and crew resource management in the world of aviation is optimizing all of your available resources to do a task well. And if you throw non-technical skills, so we think about those social and cognitive behaviors, it's actually now applying it to a clinical setting in healthcare. And Prof. Catchpole has written gallons on this. He's a Yorkshire lad, but he works in America. If he ever comes back to the UK, I might stalk him. I'm not. Don't worry, I won't. I'm not that crazy. But the problem with crew resource management out of hospital, and there's your gratuitous trauma pick for you, the teams are mixed. Clinical competencies, experiences. We might not actually understand everybody's skill set or roles. And there's a tendency to focus on titles, and that results in a poor leadership because I hate to say it, but medical doctors do just think I'm in charge. And quite often that's not a good thing. And teams are unfamiliar. They're ad hoc, they're thrown together. It's great if you know people, but invariably you won't, and it's difficult to brief. And the thing again with healthcare, particularly out of hospital, is incidents will evolve. You don't get a patient, they stay the same, they will change. The incident will change, different people will turn up. So all these things just result in a cacophony of almost chaos at times. So you do need someone to coordinate, but it's recognizing when someone else has arrived. It's a bit like a kind of bronze command, I suppose, and recognizing when someone else is come to take over, and having that trade-off between the leaders and the followers, because that's teamwork. That's your team coordination. So situation assessment is just those first elements of that gathering information, not just diving straight in. Yes, in a cardiac arrest, you will have things to do. In trauma, you'll have some immediate things to do, like catastrophic hemorrhage management. But actually, it's about pausing and gathering more information, because that's what informs your decisions. That's what helps you think outside the algorithm. That's what helps you think outside the guidelines and actually start doing genuine patient care. And it's about comprehending it, it's making sense of it with what you already know, and then throwing in where you are in clinical algorithms and things, and what's going on with the rest of the team. Because without that, you can't really make decisions, not properly, not patient-centered decisions at least. And there's loads of things that will influence that. Distraction, cats and dogs, I'll be off. But teamwork, again, it comes down to that ad hoc team. People who think they are a great leader and will be all shouty and want to do everything. They want to do every single thing. That's not a good thing. Trying to control them is hard, but you must. The environment makes it very difficult. Whether it's actually light enough to see makes it difficult. And then is it a stressful, is it an emotive case? And then trying to be emotionally intelligent. So recognizing your own stress, your own load, your own life, and that of others. Because the more emotionally intelligent and aware you are, the better you can actually interpret people and help to manage them and coordinate them. And actually, it shouldn't be person, target sort of led. It should be person, patient centered. So don't worry about targets and things and 8-minute arrival times. Actually, what's best for you and your patient, because we don't want you getting killed. So communication, if you can actively listen, that's great. But actually, if you know you're going to be concentrating on a task, tell people, I'm going to be heads, eyes in. I'm not going to be listening. If you want me, you're going to have to tap me. If we can put names on shirts, that'd be nice. COVID was really quite helpful. in a certain way for, covering up all your non-verbal communication and therefore writing on yourself a lot. But it's about that two-way, that closed loop. What do I need to communicate to you and what do I want back? And if it is a pressurized situation, it's about changing something, using names, nice names, your tone, your volume, maybe your choice of language, and that comes to these CUS principles. And touch appropriately. So, you can't, bitch slap or someone across the face, but you can really give me a pat on the shoulder, shake, something like that. Yeah, big Hamlet moment. Rail incident officer, paramedic, spent time with different teams. Yeah, and that's the thing. Where you've got multiple hats, it's understanding. You've probably got a really better understanding how those teams can work together and integrate, and actually, they're different goals and aims, and that shared aim is really important, because when we look at team coordination, there are lots of things. Roles will change, whether that's clinical roles, whether that's your leader to follower and vice versa. Being considerate of others, and that's kind of considering what people are doing from a clinical point of view and non-clinical point of view. How are they coping? Do they need support? Do they need supervision? Do they need help with working the three-way tap? Yes, please. Having a positive attitude, actually, not having a negative kind of like, oh, this is pointless, this is worthless. If you can be hands-off in a cardiac arrest or polytrauma, something like that, where there's a lot going on, to reduce your own cognitive load, get hands out, just get hands off. Don't be involved if you can, or find someone who can be hands-off. And it's about being, it's not about, turn up going, well, okay, it's just critical care paramedic. It's actually just getting on, working together, mucking in. And that's where some of the best medical doctors I've ever worked with, you forgot they were a medical doctor because they were just one of the crew. And that's when you know you've got a good team. So that's that interaction. So how can we improve? If you can do regular training, realistic sim, the better. Get into it. The more you can practice, the better. And that does mean getting off your bum a bit and doing stuff in your own time, which is great because you're here now. Having the whole team understand individual needs and skills, and appreciating that students have a pad to fill in, we know, but actually thinking about patients. Where I say get familiar, now I know how paramedics work in the UK, and it's probably similar elsewhere. I mean, get familiar with knowing people's names and abilities. Don't take them out for a 3-course meal. Be diplomatic. Listen. If you can actively listen, even better. If you know your people you're working with, you will know their strengths and weaknesses. That's where that emotional intelligence comes into it. So it's about recognizing when someone is starting to get overloaded, or maybe upset, or that they're struggling. Pips and clinical grades are not that important. And with the cardiac arrest, a well-designed, validated, usable checklist is really good, but that's a whole nother talk. You could talk for another hour on checklists. So actually, you can use behavioural marker systems. You can use them as an observational feedback tool to look at the non-technical aspects of it. So the team working, the coordination, the communication, how your situation assessment and awareness links into decision making, and actually how practicing together frequently with people is the place to make those mistakes. So when you go to patient care, actually you can drop into any ad hoc unfamiliar team and have a shared understanding and a shared goal, and actually know what everybody's on about. That's very helpful, whether it be cardiac arrest, trauma, complex, medical cases, that kind of thing. I've mentioned bias before. Don't get on the bandwagon. Yeah, think about how your own experiences, influence your own decisions as well. So a good way to do things when you go in cases is, anything changed? What have we actually done? Let's recap. Let's just have a quick mini middle brief of where are we? Where are we on this algorithm? So if you're a second or even third crew turning up, just a slight pause while stuff's still going on. Compressions can still happen. Bandaging can still go on. Actually, let's just stop and recap, where are we? Have we got the most appropriate people? Who's best to? Review it as a team. If you can keep the hierarchy flat, treat each other as people. You've just got different skills. You've just got different competencies and different experiences. Some people might have been to 20 cardiac arrests this week. Someone might have never been to one. And it's about being honest and open with that and saying, okay, yep, never done this before. Help me, talk me through it. And I'm experienced, and there will be cases where I do that. So human factors ergonomics issues, bringing the whole loop back round, it's really big. And actually, if we step back from our non-technical skills, from our cardiac arrest and trauma, and actually we look at the wider issues, there's a lot of work going on there. There was a really good paper on anaesthetics. Came out probably a couple of months ago. It did focus on non-technical skills. It's got a little bit of flack since from human factors specialists for focusing on non-technical skills. But that's kind of where we are at the moment in healthcare. We are starting to think a bit wider. I love the paper by Harari on paramedic equipment bags and placement. So that's all to do with musculoskeletal injuries. That's human factors. That's ergonomics. That's it in practice. That's about analysing, quantifying, and then understanding where you put your bag. What is the risk of injury to you and your patient? Fantastic. It's such a geeky thing. I love that paper. The paper there by Sue Hignett from Loughborough is about designing emergency ambulances for the 21st century. That's really old. Nothing's changed. The work has been done, but it's not been implemented. You've got characteristics, human-centered design. You've got patient safety practice, which is where it's really kicking off at the moment. To trauma team on call. Why are we all so stressed? And that goes back to the performance and depression, the Yerkes-Dodson kind of curve of I'm stressed because I'm either really overloaded and I've got a lot going on, I'm very underloaded. So human factors is very big. It's not just people. It's not common sense. It's system design. It's design concepts with the person being able to do their job optimal at the sort of heart of it. Not just non-technical skills, but they're really easy to do. You can recognise and manage your own load and bias. It is possible. You can practice. You can practice working together. You can practice good non-technical skills. Leadership and followership go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. But poor system design and bad organisational cultures can really make it bad, and it can make you feel like you're on a bit of a burning ship. So I'm sorry, that was an absolute rapid rundown through human factors, ergonomics, narrowing it to non-technical skills in a specific area, and then sort of dipping back up again. I hope you haven't fell asleep. I know I will always run over. I'm sorry, I could talk for England. If you've got any questions, feel free. Drop me an email or find me on Twitter. I'm a cat. At Stef Cormack, Stef with an F, because that Wolves email will disappear soon. But no, if you've got any questions, fire away. If you're just thinking I'm really hot and I'd quite like to go for an ice cream, equally that's fantastic. I hope it was all right, because it's fast. I spent 2 days at Human Factors Conference and really scratched the surface. So. Yeah, you never know. I did try and send the presentation, but it's too big to send. There's loads of links and stuff on there if you wanted them. So fill your boots. Great place. Clinical Human Factors Group, Martin Bromley, always good, and the Chartered Institute of Human Factors and Ergonomics is a fantastic place. Lots and lots of stuff. Yes. I'm glad you like the cat slides. I didn't disappoint you. See, nothing. Yeah, I actually forget what's on the slides. Yes, sorry if your fire's braining. Your brain is firing. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. Just think, first pants, then shoes. You'll always be fine. Emma, are you still there? I broke the internet.
You haven't, don't worry. I didn't want to just pop up and interrupt you. It was quite interesting.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. Book it later, but yeah, there's so much information out there. I'll PDF it and send it if that helps. It's too big to email.
Could always try WeTransfer.
What? See, technology.
WeTransfer. It's a website where you can upload a file that's too big to email, and it sends it in like a link, and you can email the link, and then they can download it off that.
See, never stop learning. What was it called again?
WeTransfer.
Oh, I thought you had said something else.
Sorry, it's the accent.
I didn't know if you're saying like a wee, or wheat.
It's Whiskey Echo Transfer.
Yeah. Brilliant. This is great. There's no questions. I've managed to fry the brain so much. Yeah, people like that. I'm overloaded. So no, thank you for inviting me. It's been really good. Hopefully I've managed to answer stuff as I went along. I'm not just looking into the sky, I'm looking at another screen. I'm not having a stroke, don't worry. Not yet.
So if anybody would like to come back to Trauma Care and watch our next classic webinar, which is pre-hospital management. Oh, see, I feel like that's probably connected to this.
Oh, it's a classic.
Yeah.
Crush injuries. See, you don't get, that's a good one to go to. You don't get, there's a low exposure, proper crush injuries.
What, like 127 hours?
Why would you do that on your own? Why would you go and do that on your own?
Because the heat makes people stupid.
There is that. See, it's all about the environment. Oh, brilliant. Oh, what are my thoughts on crew physical fitness to practice? Oh, see, this is not the fact. Look at my 16 chins. This is not the person to ask on physical fitness anymore. I find it very interesting that certain ambulance trusts have a fitness assessment to get into their trust, and they never do one again. I think you do need a certain amount of physical fitness because you've got to be able to do the job, and the job of a out of hospital sort of ambulance paramedic is physically quite demanding at times. There's a lot of, when I used to be in the helicopter, it was about stamina. Yeah, you got to be physically strong, but stamina was a big thing. So how that fits into the kind of human factors thing actually then comes to your equipment design stretch. When I started, we had stretchers that were 4 stone, and we had to pick them up and carry them up the stairs. The physical fitness was a massive thing. And I tried to pick people up the old carry chairs and go backwards up the steps into the ambulance and up to sitting on my bum. So fitness is part of it, and it also does help. Having physical fitness helps to your mental fitness. So I did used to work with a guy who was morbidly obese, I'll be frank, and he couldn't fit down stairs to a cellar once. He struggled to get in the truck. Jerry, you'll know him. And there was the argument, actually, it might be just a bit too big. The York 4, yeah, they're really heavy. So I look at new stretchers now and I'm like, oh, check you out. Oh, look, it's electric and stuff. Or it's hydraulic. They confuse me. So it comes back to system design again. So all the lifting aids we've got now, from equipment point of view, are very, very helpful. But has that had an influence on reduced strength and stamina? I don't know. You should make it easier to do your job, but then because of how hospital care is so not textbook, is it? It's hard work, and there will be situations when you just need to be able to kind of. Yes, I remember the stolid work. Yes, Stu, horrific things. Keep falling and side loading. Couldn't do it. One arm strong than the other. Fingers, yeah. Or leaning on the stairs as you get down and taking pictures off the wall. So equipment's helped, but yeah, I think I don't know if you could say there should be a standard physical fitness thing. I don't agree with it working a heart rate alone. I've got this fancy watch. I call it a fancy watch. It's really basic. I think it's fancy, but it's supposed to do one of those movement tracking things. It tells you to get up if you've been sat too long, but it bases it on heart rate. So I was driving in town the other day, my heart rate was up. Thought I was being really active. No, I was really stressed. I wasn't being active at all. And it is resilience is physical. Yeah, it's a difficult one to get into society in the world of the 21st century. That's incredibly diplomatic for me. But yeah, it's. I think there should be a kind of, we're not going to be Royal Marines. Oh God, not. But then I was sat to two HEMS guys yesterday and thinking, you're both quite buff, aren't you? Do you spend a lot of time in the gym? I can say that because I know them very, very well. Dave would just laugh at me.
Not as embarrassing as me telling a Royal Marine musician that he was very hench.
Do you want you just sidle up to and go, very hench?
No, we were actually at a really posh meal and it just came out.
Was there lots of port?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Alcohol to me is the same as rock uranium, I was once told, because it's truth serum. So, and it puts me to sleep. So terrible. Any other questions, or can we all go and have ice cream and a cup of tea?
I think Ian's made a comment.
Yes, the resilience is definitely coupled with physical fitness. It's not just about stamina, but it's also mental stamina. So it's about having that headspace as well. So I used to run while my knees had cartilage. It was a great headspace, sort of clearing space time, and that does give you that kind of mental resilience. There's oh Christ, what's her name? Elizabeth, I can't remember her name. She's a New Zealand researcher. Was studying on paramedic resilience, and then the New Zealand attacks happened. And actually, what they found interesting was dealing with major incidents or very public incidents that sadly happened in Nottingham the other day. Paramedics got a lot of support. So actually, they found they didn't need to be resilient as fact because they were just focused on what they needed to do, and it's actually quite a short burst of kind of work. And they had lots of support after. It was the day-to-day jobs that actually, when you look at resilience as a word, it's not a great thing. Excuse me. It's about actually that ability to cope and realizing that at some point you probably will not cope if you're just constantly pounded with things. So being resilient isn't a really great thing, but it is definitely linked with physical fitness. And you'll find those who are physically fitter probably are a little bit, I don't know, cognitively better and emotionally better, or not. There will be a study on it, definitely, somewhere.
Maybe you can do it.
I've got heaps and peace stuff to sort out.
What's the next level after a PhD?
Oh, postdoctoral and
do that.
Stuff. Yeah, I'll especially. Oh no, no, it wasn't Elizabeth. Oh, it's gonna bug me. It was Elizabeth. This is me in technology, where I go to Twitter and find a message from about 16 years ago. We did joint work over in Canada with people. That's so bad. Lindsay Belcher from Canada is awesome. And Shane Devlin in Ireland is awesome. Gosh, I'm going. Cheryl Cameron's brilliant. If you want to look at anything on palliative care and paramedic resilience, Cheryl Cameron's really good actually. Hang on. Look, Asbury, Elizabeth Asbury, longitudinal well-being in New Zealand. Check me out on technology. Must be time for bed. I'm spent.
So a couple of you asked where you can purchase your CPD certificate. If you want to scan the QR code, you can fill in the form and buy the ticket. I need to go to bed. Buy the certificate at the end, or if you really struggle with the QR code, you can email us at admin@traumacare.org.uk and we'll send you the link. The old-fashioned way.
Oh, Jerry's going home to bed.
Oh, Jerry.
Bless her.
But none of these webinars would be possible without our sponsors, and one of our great sponsors is Galen, and I'm sure lots of you use Penthrox. I've never been given Penthrox, and I've never had to deal with paramedics, so I guess in some way I've been quite lucky. But if you want to know more about Penthrox, scan the QR code, and if you want the information leaflet, we're happy to send it across to anybody who would like it. Another one of our great sponsors is Icarus, the Power of Health, and they do simulated conferences in SOS situations, from tunnels to battle lanes to tunnels, funnily enough. And even deserts. But at the moment, I don't think they need a desert. They could just go outside in the UK.
It's so hot here.
I know.
There's Australians going, no, it's cold.
Another great sponsor is CallSafe, and I know someone from CallSafe was watching. They are a first aid sponsor, and if you want to go on their website and check out their CPD material, there's lots of courses on there, and they're great guys. I love CallSafe at every conference. Another sponsor is World Extreme Medicine, and they do conferences and wilderness courses from the UK to Slovenia to Norway. Fancy the Norway one, but, you know. And these are our great sponsors, partners even, and academic partners, including Sunderland, Gloucestershire and Wolverhampton. And pro trainings are great. They've got lots of training programs, including CPR for your pet, which is important, especially in the heat.
Yeah.
Dogs overheat very easily.
Very easily.
And thanks everyone for joining our webinar tonight. And my first one, you've all been very great to me. And Steph has been a great first introduction. No, just a first introduction. I was very nervous. So Steph's been great, and I've really enjoyed listening to the webinar, even though I'm not in the medical field. And it's got lots of interchangeable information.
That's really polite.
It has. It's now 9:30, and I'd really like to go home to bed.
No, sorry.
It's okay.
You just have to go and sit on the towpath and have a drink.
Yeah.
Steph Jones just sent me a picture and said, I got to FRAM and poured a massive glass of wine. So I think that's what we should all do.
That definitely needs to go on Twitter.
Yeah, it will. But no, thank you for all signing up and listening and probably dying. But no, if you want the questions, we're on Twitter and stuff. So enjoy the rest of the really muggy evening. I'm going to get a cornetto.
Do love a cornetto.
Right then.
So thanks everybody. Stay safe, put lots of sun cream on, stay hydrated, and a random factoid, which is kind of interesting, I guess, and relevant. The world's largest sandcastle was 54 feet long. And 168 trucks of sand had to be used to get it to be built.
A lot of sand.
I know.
Wow.
And there's a sand shortage, that's why.
Who knew? Excellent. Right. I'm off for my cornetto. See
Good
you
night,
all sometime
everyone.
soon.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.